Hello and welcome to this IChemE Global Awards 2021 webinar. My name is Dr. Susanna Gyenes. I am from the IChemE Safety Center and I am delighted to be here with you today to reveal the winner of the IChemE Process Safety Award sponsored by PM Group. The IChemE Global Awards celebrate chemical, process and biochemical engineering excellence and are widely considered as the world's most prestigious chemical engineering awards. Our Process Safety Award recognizes the project, process, or product to best demonstrate excellence in process safety. This award is part of IChemE's wider commitment to recognizing and supporting process safety competence. Before I continue, I would like to say a few words about the IChemE Safety Center. The ISC brings together organizations from different sectors around the world to share and learn in process safety. In the past 12 months, we have continued to support our members and the wider community by ensuring accessibility to valuable safety information. We have published several guidance documents across a wide range of topics. We continue with our Incident Anniversary series, the Safety Lore, webinars, and podcasts. We do this to advance process safety worldwide because people have a right not to get hurt at work. You can follow us on social media at SafetyIChemE. Anyway, let's get back to the IChemE Awards and the Process Safety Award. Before we check out the contenders, I would like to introduce our sponsor. Please welcome PM Group's UK Head of Agency, Shauna Turner.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending where you are in the world. I'm just going to give you a brief presentation today of PM Group. And I guess firstly to say that we're once again very proud to be sponsoring this award with the IChemE. We have a long-standing relationship and safety is very much at the heart of what we do as a company. So this is a really good fit for us to be here today. So first of all, of course, good luck to all of our award nominees, and we're going to be seeing their presentation shortly. I promise not to take up too much of your time because that's why we're here, is to see them, not me. So just a brief overview of PM Group. As a company, you can see there our key facts, but I guess some of those are at 48 years in business now. We're fully employee owned, we're worldwide, and currently sitting at approximately 3,300 personnel. Our sectors that we do work within are pharmaceuticals, food and drink, advanced manufacturing, particularly around specialty and fine chemicals, energy around waste recycling, utilities. And the services that we provide across that are much wider than process safety. And as you can see there, the full gamut, so the project management, project controls, all full architectural and engineering, design, construction management, and very importantly, health and safety. So we have a business unit called ESS, Environmental, Sustainability and Safety. So today I will be discussing much more around the safety, but I just wanted to give you a view that these are the services that we offer. So all around sustainability and environmental consultancy, and then of course, most importantly, process safety, including pressure relief devices. So process safety expertise, what does PM Group offer? So we have the full spectrum of process safety services. So everything to do with your process hazard analysis, LOPAs, SIL assessments, but extended beyond that, your fire and explosion risk assessments, chemical reaction hazard assessments, hazardous area classifications. We also do auditing for a lot of our clients, particularly when we're working on older sites where we're having to do some risk assessments or gap analysis work. So we will go in and audit a client's site for various compliances, do process safety reviews for them, updates to Tacoma safety reports, process safety management reviews to help them keep up to date. We also do calculations for our clients, and we have a PRD, a pressure relief device bureau, and we do the full design around that, including installation verification. We also offer consequence modelling for feeding into those coma safety reports, pipe stress analysis, etc. So the PRD Bureau is quite a large offering within our process safety offering, and there's a core team of specialists that are supported by the wider process engineering teams, but there's 30 plus people who are ring fenced for this exercise, and they do over 1,000 pressure relief calculations a year. And that'll include technical support to advise clients, helping to embed good PRD practice, and also on any new projects that we might be doing, establishing those philosophies early on so that all the designers understand what we should be looking for. So just briefly, I guess just to pull all that together, the specialist capability across the life cycle of a project. So from conceptual design, where you might be doing site selection or understanding site constraints, legal compliances, through to operational emergency management systems, accident investigation, and everything in between, particularly around basis of safety and your process hazard analysis that you would need to be doing across the life cycle of your project. Then just before I finish up, just a couple of sort of process safety case studies, I guess really just identifying what we're currently doing as a company. So some of the recent process safety services we would have offered to some of our clients is a big one at the moment, as I was saying, is risk assessment of aging assets, as well as risk assessments around new projects. So, and doing all the HAZ studies and the LOPAs that are required around that. Gap analysis versus best practice guidance. Again, that's quite a big thing that we would be doing for our clients. And also the constant updating to your basis of safety and your COMA as and when processes change or you introduce new processes, and the cycles that you need to do for those report updates in terms of your cyclical HAZOP studies that need to be done usually on a 5-yearly basis if you're an upper tier site. And some of the clients that we've been doing that work for of late, you can see across the sectors that we work within, so a number of pharmaceutical clients, MSD, GSK, Pfizer, who I'm sure a well-known name, and AstraZeneca there in current times, but also do a lot of work with clients, the likes of Johnson Matthey, a lot of fine chemicals and refinery work with them. And that really concludes my presentation. Short, sweet, and hopefully gives you a feel for PM Group. The safety is very much the center of what we do as a company. And as I say, being a sponsor of this award, I think for maybe the 3rd or 4th year in a row is very important to who we are and is a good fit in our relationship with the IChemE. So thank you very much for your time. And unless anyone has any questions, I guess we can go straight in, Susanna.
Thank you, Shona. That was really interesting and really informative. Now, I don't see any questions at this time. So our awards judging panel has been working hard in recent weeks to review and rank all of the entries, and here are our finalists. GSK R&D, GSK again, a joint entry from the Non-Metallic Innovation Center, Saudi Aramco Technologies and TWI. Another joint entry, this one is from Safer Together, Aero Energy, Enermec, Santos and Worley, Saudi Aramco, and finally, winner of the IChemE Malaysia Process Safety Award, Asian Bintulu Fertilizer. All our finalists have been invited to join us today to tell us more about their work and answer your questions. You can get in touch using the GoToWebinar questions box on screen. And I think we already can see a couple of chats going on. So let's get started with our first finalist representing GSK R&D. Please welcome Anthony James. Anthony.
Good morning, everybody. Let's see if we can get this into slideshow. Fantastic. Hello. So I'm Tony, and thank you very much for taking the time to join today and hear the great work the team's done to make early phase medicine manufacture safer. So a little bit of preamble to put this in context, so not everybody will be aware of this. Pharmaceutical manufacturing comes in two big chunks. There's primary processing, which was my world for about 2 decades, and John's talks on after this is set in this world, and that's reactive chemistry, solvent using, it makes the active molecule, and pretty much all the operations in that are inert, all under nitrogen. And after that, for the last decade, my world has been secondary manufacture that takes that active ingredient, formulates it with other materials to produce the tablets or whatever it is we take as patients. And a few operations are inerted, but most of the operations are done in air. And unless you realize the operations are having done in air, then the rest of this talk doesn't really make sense. And it's these unique challenges that we come to address. And we're set out to solve two real problems. The first is, what process safety information do we absolutely need to know, and what controls do we have to have in place in this early phase pilot plant world? And to put early phase in context, there might be at most 10 kilograms of material in existence, and we really need that. It's just going to patients for the first time, so we're really short on material. And what happens if we don't know the information that we really need to know? That's the two parts of this. Now, when I was first out of university and I wanted to know the property of something, I'd go to Perry. If Perry let me down, I'd potter down to the technical library, and nowadays things are much better. It's just information is just a few clicks away most of the time. But early phase medicine manufacture is different because it's very poor in data. It's very poor in data because we're dealing with materials that have never existed before, and there's not much of it available. I said 10 kilograms if we're lucky, which means we often don't have the kilo or so that we need to spare to get full fire and explosion data, because we really need that material for patients, and there's so little of it. And we compensate for this with really quite burdensome layers of protection in our pilot plants to allow for this lack of knowledge, and it makes operating very difficult. And across the industry, there are accidents, and that prompted us onto this work. So there are really two arms to this work to try and make us safer. And the first arm is to really understand, what do we need to know? What can go wrong? What properties must we know to mitigate that? What controls do we have to have in place, and do we know they're working? And the next slide's very busy. I'll try and go through this. So with the many esoteric ways to igniting things, there's about 4 that are relevant to the secondary pilot plant world. That can lead to fires, they can lead to dust explosions. Although it's not ignition, runaway thermal decomposition represents a very similar threat level. So we can have fires, we can have dust explosions, we can have runaway decompositions. And there are properties we need to know to establish our controls to prevent these. Maximum recommended processing temperature is easy to get, and it takes a few milligrams of material, so we always know that. And sometimes the properties we need to know to mitigate should something go wrong. For thermal decomposition, again, that's easy. For dust explosion, Pmax and ST class, many of these other ones over here, that takes a lot of material to learn, and we don't necessarily know them. So what the team have done is spend a long time laboriously going through unit operation by unit operation, understanding what information is critical and what controls are critical. And that's involved obviously talking with suppliers, literature reviews, a lot of calculations around charge generation potential, some calculation around kinetic energy and angular momentum, and all sorts of other things. So each unit of operations ended up with several pages of detailed basis of safety, which at the top level, we have some operations come out very, very benign, and others are completely different. So the milling operation, there are a few things that we absolutely have to know, and there are lots of controls that are completely critical to that safe operation. And in going through this work, we found some controls where we have to actually go beyond the special conditions on the ATEX certificate. In fact, actually that isn't sufficient, and we need more restriction. All this comes together in a very handy chart that sits in our plant entry risk assessment process. And you can see the sea of green, that often we can cope without knowing information as long as our controls are working. And then you can see various areas in red where we absolutely have to know things, and we cannot operate unless we know it. And inevitably, there are grey areas, in this case masquerading as a yellow area, where things are more nuanced. And this is proving hugely beneficial to us in our plant entry process. It's made a real step change for us. But this only works if our controls work. So we had to look at our controls, and I thought our barriers were really good. Go out and investigate them, and that wasn't always the case. And I really want to thank the plant team for the work they've done, for the integrity, determination, and excellence they've shown in going out, identifying weak barriers, and fixing them. There's lots of chunks of work sit under this. I particularly want to call out our new FERA process, which is step change improvement on everything that went before, and it coming in very early at design. We're building in robust barriers from the start, and we're marrying process and operational safety together. Aren't always comfortable bedfellows. Now, though it isn't on this slide, I'd also like to call out Sydney Lang's work on pre-start earthing checks and making that a really resilient system, because in the absence of inertia, earthing is a really key layer of protection for us. So now there'll be brief overview of understanding what we need to know. Then the second problem is, what do we do if we don't know it? So what do we do if we have to know dust explosion properties, or we have to know minimum ignition energy, and we don't know them, and we can't spare the material to go out and find them? If we can spare the material, then we do. And what I'm going to discuss briefly now is recently published, and please by all means go away and look it up. I think it's very technically interesting, but it's not about being technically interesting, it's about keeping people safe. So our target is to have a methodology to predict fire and explosion properties and identify materials of concern. And for us, material of concern is one which has unusually susceptible to ignition, has dust explosion properties beyond those that we can normally mitigate in our equipment, is unusually susceptible to ignition at a low temperature, and many people on this call will instantly recognize that as T3. And our success criteria, well, we should use less than a gram of material. Even though we're a large pharmaceutical company, we couldn't spend any money. And we'd accept a level of false positives. What we really wouldn't want is any false negatives. So moving on to minimum ignition energy, there's an existing literature equation to give minimum ignition energy, and for a range of typical densities and specific heats of products, we can solve this equation. Since the equation was developed, there's been greater understanding of spark generation efficiency. There's a correction that needs to be added for that, but it comes out about 9 to 26 millijoules. And for our established products over time, we've burnt a lot of material to understand their fire explosion properties. So we've got a big database and a fantastic custodian of that database. So we can compare that prediction with historic data. And what we see is the equation is in the right ballpark, but it isn't giving a broad enough range. If we look at the molecules that underline all those bars, some interesting things start to emerge. Those at that side, the molecules, you look at them, they're very stable molecules, and the crystal lattice is tightly bound, really stable materials. Come over the other end, and then we're a completely different game. The molecules have obvious structural weaknesses. They can easily cleave something flammable. They may also have a very large decomposition exotherm, so they bring some of their own heat to the party. And the crystal lattice may also be really quite weak. So our MRE model still has that Calcut model at its center. The 2's there for spark generation efficiency. Then we have correction terms for thermal stability, intermolecular stability, and molecular stability. And to run the model, you need good chemists. Unfortunately, we have some excellent chemists because we need people that can understand how molecules will cleave and what they'll cleave. And we need to back that up with 2 experiments. But those 2 experiments only use 50 milligrams of material. For the future, we think there's another factor around shape, flow, dispersion, but that factor is probably more important for the dust explosion model we're coming on to. So how are we doing? So have a look at that. The top 2 compounds, A and B, This is all where we've made predictions before there were any test data. So the couple at the top where it said this is a material of concern, and we were right. There were 2, now 3 compounds where we said it's material of concern, and we were wrong, but we weren't wrong by that far. There's a big group in the middle. Again, there's one more since I put this together, where we said it's not material of concern, and we were broadly right. Prediction was decently accurate. And a couple at the bottom where we said it's not material of concern, and we were overly conservative. But MIE is going really, really well. Dust explosions follow the same hypothesis, that the dust explosion properties are dominated by the most readily flammable portion of the molecule. So sometimes that is the whole molecule goes up, but more often we believe that's a flammable fragment that's cleaving from the parent, and it's that fragment, sometimes a couple of fragments, that dominate the dust explosion properties. We do Pmax by thermodynamic combustion of the flammable parts, and essentially that's undergraduate thermodynamics, which is just as well because it's the only thermodynamics I'm still able to do. And it's based on the cleaved flammable fragments of the molecule. We do the whole molecule as a safeguard, and heat of combustion comes from a bit of simulation software called Cheetah that John also mentions in his talk that's up next, or published data if it's cleaving a really common molecule. KST, I'll come on to the next slide. So KST we're taking as a rate and an Arrhenius type relationship. So there's an expansion factor at the start, because generally you have more gas moles after combustion than you had before combustion. The pre-exponential factors relates to minimum ignition energy and the percentage of the molecule that's burning. On the exponential part, minus E over R, we relate to heat of combustion, and T is the adiabatic flame temperature that you get from the thermodynamic combustion calculation. Again, how are we doing? We know the model's not perfect. No model is perfect, but this model is useful, and we set the bar a little bit lower than our true material of concern bar. And as you can see, the top first 2, we've correctly flagged materials of concern before we knew the result. Next couple down, we've had false positives. One of them massively a false positive. Little group of 4 that are broadly accurate, and again, a couple at the bottom where we're excessively safe side. And we think we have these excessive safe side answers or results because the model assumes perfect dispersion of the powder, and we've got some evidence that these powders don't actually disperse perfectly. Whether we can build this into the model or not, we don't know. We're still working on that. The minimum layer ignition temperatures follows really the same methodology. It ends up as a flow chart. So we're interested in how the molecule cleaves. Does it cleave something which has a very low auto ignition temperature? Is there anything in the structure that suggests it could act as an accelerant? Does it have a very large heat of thermal decomposition that can help take the molecule up to an ignition temperature? If not, we go down a very clean side of the chart. We end up at T3, we might end up at T4, or we might end up at we really have to do the experiment and there's no way out of doing the experiment. In conclusion, the first project, how do we know what we need to know? That's gone really well. So we do know what we need to know for each unit operation. It's giving us much quicker and cleaner and consistent plant entry. We've got better controls and more resilient systems. For property prediction, we should always test if we have the materials to allow us to test. Prediction is not as good as testing. We should always test, but we are picking up the materials of concern with the caveat that it's a relatively small sample size. We're meeting our success criteria. We can work on the dispersion factor. Whether we achieve that or not, I don't know. We shall see. But it's in use. It said here we use for 22 compounds. I think we're now up to 24 compounds, but it's in use and really providing value for us. I'm conscious I'm probably overstaying my welcome. Huge team that delivered this. A vast amount of expertise represented on the names on this page. I particularly want to call out Rebecca, Bayer, Eddie and Sydney, because these are younger engineers just coming up to chartership, or in Eddie's case, an engineering apprentice. And really the future of engineering is in great hands. So thank you and good luck to all the rest of the presenters today. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Anthony. And that was really interesting and quite detailed, to be honest. And we already have questions. So if you are ready, then I'd like to
Yep,
read
I'm
them
ready.
out for you. Okay. Have we validated the prediction of the model on Pmax and KST using the testing results as per the ASTM E1226 Pmax and the MIE ASTM E2019?
Yeah, so thank you. So we do very little testing in-house. We'd normally send materials out to very recognized testing houses who do the tests to those standards, rather recognized standards. So in building the model, we ran, I don't know, it's hard to say 50 to 60 compounds where we knew the answer to check the model was right. So the short answer to your question is yes, and hopefully that gives you enough additional detail. But yeah, before we set the model into use, we had checked it as a large number of compounds where we knew the answer. So in that, we do get a number of false positives like I presented today, but we didn't have any false negatives.
Interesting, thank you. And there is a continuation of the first question. How well the test data correlates with the model prediction?
Yes, so I haven't got the full data, but so we have no false negatives. We get about our success criteria level of false positives. So we're running at about 30% false positives, less for MIE and much higher for dust explosions. And as I said on the top, I think that's to do with dispersion because the model assumes perfect dispersion, and we think that's not met in reality. And there's some interesting data when we come and look at blends that explains that a bit more, but I think that's probably too long to talk through today.
Thank you very much for getting things started, Anthony. In fact, we don't have any more questions, so thank you all for the questions as well, and thank you, Anthony, again. Now it's time to move on to our second finalist. Once again, it's GSK, and this is a pre-recorded presentation.
Hello, my name is John Lim. It's an honor to represent the GSK team as I'll be talking today about our work in a safe and effective deactivation of rainy cobalt using aqueous sodium nitrate. Now, the reaction in question is shown here on the title slide. We're trying to reduce benzonitrile 1 to the benzylamine 2. Quite a bit of screening went into identifying rainy cobalt as the ideal catalyst for this transformation. Now, because 2 is taken through 3 more stages of chemistry before the API step, it's imperative that we have a clean reaction profile in this reduction, which is what rainy cobalt gives us. However, with any heterogeneous catalytic reaction, there's a filtration involved, and thus there's an inherent risk if that catalyst bed were to run dry. So this is what happens when rainy cobalt gets dry. So what I'm doing here is something you should never do, and filter the catalyst to dryness. The image on the left is taken with a thermal imaging camera, the image on the right, which is a standard video camera. And as you can see, upon reaching dryness, the catalyst bed reaches temperatures in excess of 350 degrees, which is the detection limit of the camera, and thus the actual temperature is probably much greater than that. So the pros of using rainy cobalt is that it gives us a very clean reaction profile using an earth-abundant metal. The cons is that because we're loading 10 to 20 weight% catalyst, that's a lot of catalyst that we have to handle and dispose of later. Now we had a pilot plant campaign planned at our Cork pilot plant where we anticipated making about 100 kilograms of API. Now you can imagine if we're charging 10 to 20 weight% catalyst, that's 20 kilograms of catalyst or so. Well, you don't want that much catalyst reaching temperatures in excess of 350 degrees in just a few seconds. And thus the Cork pilot plant requested that we come up with a way to effectively deactivate the rainy cobalt so that it was safe to handle even when dry. So in other words, we couldn't just drum up the stuff underwater, we actually had to deactivate it. Now, a common way to deactivate rainy metals is using bleach. And so what I'm doing here in this video is I have a little bit of rainy cobalt in the graduated cylinder. I'm adding typical household bleach solution. Now, as the video comes into focus, you'll notice some vigorous bubbling happening. Now, this is concerning. You don't want this to be happening in your reactor. Now, it's not too dangerous here in the fume hood, but you don't want all this off-gassing to happen when you're trying to quench the catalyst in a reactor. What's also very concerning is that the temperature of the slurry was about 20 degrees at the start before the addition of the bleach, Upon adding the bleach, you notice very rapid exotherm in excess of 20 degrees. Now, keep in mind, this is not really a controlled reactor. This is open to air, so there's probably some heat loss to the environment, and so that 20-degree exotherm is probably not indicative of the actual heat that's generated. There's probably more heat than that. And thus, just qualitatively, we can see that the bleach quench is not safe. It's exothermic, and we see a lot of gas evolution upon quenching. Now, I should say, though, that the bleach quench does work. The catalyst, after it's been treated with bleach, is deactivated. However, there's some hazards that are clearly evident just upon qualitative observation, but we wanted a more quantitative evaluation of the hazards of using bleach to quench rainy cobalt. So in order to quantitatively assess the hazards of using bleach to quench rainy cobalt, what we did is we took 35 grams of rainy cobalt from our supplier. We put it into a par vessel and hydrogenated with about 4 or 5 bar of hydrogen to mimic reaction conditions. We then took that activated catalyst and we measured the heat and off-gassing when quenching with 20 volumes of 5% bleach in what's called our RC1, or reaction calorimeter. The green trace represents the addition of the bleach. The red trace represents the heat output. The blue trace represents the off-gassing. And what you notice is that once we start adding the bleach, there's an immediate exotherm. In fact, there's so much heat we actually have to wait for the reaction to cool down before we add the rest. Now, once we resume the bleach addition, we notice another exotherm and very significant off-gassing here, and the gas we later identified as oxygen. So at the end of the reaction, we did the calculations, and we found that the total heat output was about 3,800 kilojoules per kilogram catalyst, which equated to a 53-degree adiabatic temperature rise. Now, a typical plant reactor can handle about a 20-degree adiabatic temperature rise, so this is well in excess of that. What was also very concerning is the gas evolution, 91 liters per kilogram of catalyst. And so once again, if you're charging 20 kilograms of catalyst, you do not want to be producing about 1,800 liters of oxygen when you're trying to do the quench. Now, the pilot plant staff, upon seeing this data, were understandably alarmed, and thus they would not run the rainy cobalt process as we designed it using the bleach quench. And at this point in the project, there were a lot of meetings happening, a lot of brainstorming, a lot of ideas that didn't actually work. And so this put the project timelines in jeopardy. So at this point, I did what a lot of people do during times of stress. I went to Google. Here is a screenshot of the Google search I did that day, deactivation of rainy metals, which brought back this patent from 1957 from the DuPont company. And here the authors describe a deactivation of rainy nickel using aqueous sodium nitrate or nitrite. They said that the aqueous sodium nitrate was a little bit more effective. Now, it's one of the shortest patents I've ever read, and I'm glad I read to the end, because at the end the authors mentioned that rainy cobalt could also be deactivated in the same manner. So we decided to try it out for ourselves. So we did the same reaction as before. We took 35 grams of rainy cobalt. We activated it under 4 or 5 bar of hydrogen, but this time we quenched with 20 volumes of 5% sodium nitrate in an RC1, where we measured the heat and off-gassing. So I showed the data for the sodium nitrate quench on the left and the data for the bleach quench on the right. So once we begin our addition of sodium nitrate, we do see a spike in heat, as you see here in the red curve, but the total heat is actually measured as the area underneath the red curve, and so the area underneath the red curve on the left is much less than the area underneath the red curve on the right. Now, when we compare the gas evolution, which is these the blue traces here, when we start adding sodium nitrate, we do see some spiking here, but you notice the difference in scale of the y-axis, which measures the gas flow. For the sodium nitrate quench, we notice that it's nearly 50-fold less than the bleach quench. So this spiking that we see here is really not much more than baseline noise. There's very little gas evolution with the sodium nitrate quench. So when we compare the numbers for each quench, we see that the sodium nitrate quench produces about 4-fold less heat per kilogram of catalyst, which equates to an over 4-fold reduction in the total adiabatic temperature rise, and this value of 12 degrees is well within the safety limits. We also see that the sodium nitrate quench produces very little gas and no oxygen. And so what we think is happening in both quenches is that we're oxidizing the surface-bound metal hydrides to deactivate the catalyst. But with bleach, what happens is that we're producing oxygen, whereas with sodium nitrate, we just produce some nitrogen, which we know is inert. We also see how much more efficient the sodium nitrate quench is. We see that 2 moles of sodium nitrate can quench 10 moles of the cobalt hydride, and that whereas with the bleach quench, it takes 3 moles of sodium hypochlorite or bleach to quench 2 moles of cobalt hydride. Now, this is a hypothesis of ours, so in order to test it, our process safety engineers perform what's called a Cheetah calculation. And so Cheetah is just a standard process safety calculation where they can estimate the heat output based on published data. And so when we do the calculation based on these proposed balanced chemical equations, the expected heat output for each quench is very close to the observed value. The numbers are all well and good, but does the sodium nitrate quench actually work? Does it actually deactivate the catalyst? So what I've done here is I've taken some activated rainy cobalt, I've slurried it up in some sodium nitrate solution, and I'm going to filter to dryness again. Now, a lot of presenters will save the exciting video for the end, the one with the big explosion. I'm going to do the exact opposite of that and show you the most boring video here at the end of the presentation. As I filter to dryness, absolutely nothing happens. So I measured the temperature of the catalyst bed for 45 minutes. I won't make you sit through all 45 minutes, but in all that time, the temperature of the catalyst bed never gets above 20 degrees. The catalyst has been completely deactivated, stable to open air even when dry. And so this material is sitting in my fume hood as we speak, completely happy. No self-igniting behavior is ever observed. And thus, upon seeing the data, the rainy cobalt process was approved for our pilot plant campaign. So if you care to read about this further, we published an OPRD not too long ago. And finally, I just want to acknowledge the whole team, the process chemists in chemical development, our process safety colleagues who performed the calorimetry experiments and the Cheetah calculations, and our colleagues at the Cork pilot plant. I'd also like to thank you all for your kind attention, and IChemE for their gracious consideration of our work for this award.
Thank you. That was a pre-recorded presentation. That means we won't be stopping for Q&A this time. Instead, we will be moving swiftly on to our third presentation of the day. We have a pre-recorded video for the joint entry from the Non-Metallic Innovation Center, Saudi Aramco Technologies, and TWI. And Rachel Lund will be here with us after the presentation to answer any questions.
Hi, my name is Rachel Lund and I work in the Numerical Modelling and Optimisation team at TWI. Today I'm going to talk about a body of work we've undertaken regarding the development of a framework to assess the risk of electrostatic discharge, or ESD, in polymer composite pipes used in the gas industry. This work was undertaken on behalf of the Non-Metallic Innovation Centre in collaboration with Saudi Aramco, and I'd like to mention my colleagues Tyler London and Michael Roy from TWI, and Abdurazak Tradia, Abdullah Sharani, Kostas Patopoulos, and Anwar Parvez from Saudi Aramco, who have greatly contributed to this work. So I'll start with some background on electrostatic discharge. There are two competing processes which determine the level of static charge accumulation on a pipe containing fluid flow: the rate at which charges separate and the rate at which charges recombine. Charge generation in flowing liquids is often described in terms of a double layer, as you can see in the top image. At the fluid pipe interface, one sign of charge is preferentially absorbed onto the surface of the pipe. As the fluid then flows, charge separation occurs. Although the charge is separated at the wall, turbulent flow mixes the charge into the bulk of the flowing liquid, creating a current known as the streaming current. The streaming current is equal to the volume flow rate multiplied by the fluid charge density. According to the National Fire and Protection Agency, a negligible amount of static electricity is generated in a single-phase gas flow. However, the presence of suspended solids or liquids results in charge carried by the gas phase, as can be seen in the bottom image. Liquid droplets tend to be charged due to the presence of a double layer and are not in electrical continuity, inhibiting charge relaxation. This is why a mist flow is undesirable in terms of electrostatic discharge. Competing with charge generation is charge recombination via dissipation pathways. Whilst the rate of charge generation is similar in both metallic and non-metallic pipes, the rate of charge dissipation is much lower in non-metallic pipes due to the higher resistivity of the non-metallic material. So when the potential difference between the inner and outer surfaces of the pipe reaches a critical level, discharge may occur. This can create large amounts of heat, resulting in melting and pinhole formation, as can be seen in the image on the right of the slide. This critical level is known as the material's dielectric strength, which is the maximum electric field that the material can withstand without breakdown. So the risk of electrostatic discharge should therefore be properly quantified and mitigated to ensure safe operation of non-metallic pipes in gas service, and this is a challenge that we've addressed in this work. Our aims were to develop a model of a non-metallic system, and this would be a multi-physics modelling approach to assess the risk of electrostatic discharge. The problem is highly nonlinear and multi-physical, and we would validate the model against experiment. So that was a challenge. So can we predict the risk of electrostatic discharge in non-metallic pipes? We created a hierarchical assessment method, whereby increasingly more detailed and complex models, as you progressed down the levels, gave more accurate results. So going into detail on the different levels. So our level 1 approach, which was the baseline approach that we adopted, and was the most conservative method and relied on determination of the flow regime using Baker or Mantane charts, which use the gas and liquid velocity as inputs. If a mist flow was present, then it was determined that there would be a high risk of static charge buildup and potential discharge. And so the operating conditions would be altered to avoid this mist flow regime. This approach has several limitations, however, in that it is reliant wholly on the flow regime, it's overly conservative, and the proposed mitigation measures can be difficult to implement. In addition, it doesn't quantify the risk of ESD. Our level 2 approach aimed to address these limitations and improve the accuracy of the level 1 by quantifying the risk of electrostatic discharge. So the pipe flow module in COMSOL was used to calculate the gas velocity along the pipe, which is one of the main inputs into the Walmsley equation. The Walmsley equation was the analytical equation that we used to calculate the potential evolved at steady state on the inner surface of the pipe wall due to the streaming current, and is the equation shown to the left of the slide. The graphs are examples of the electric field across the pipe wall along the pipe. So the electric field is shown in blue and the dielectric strength of the pipe material is shown in orange in this case. The graph to the right of the slide shows a case where the risk is deemed low, so the maximum electric field is below the dielectric strength of the pipe. The graph at the bottom of the page shows the case where the electric field across the pipe wall is predicted to exceed the dielectric strength of the material, and so there is deemed to be a risk of electrostatic discharge in this case. Should this occur, a level 3 assessment will be undertaken to further remove conservatism. So limitations of the level 2 approach are that there are conservative assumptions incorporated in the Walmsley equation, such as the assumption of a constant electric field through the thickness of the pipe. In addition, the level 2 approach does not incorporate the charging effect due to the impact of the sand particles of any sand particles present, and it's challenging to compare different mitigation methods. So our level 3 approach was the full numerical modelling approach accounting for the multi-physical behaviour in COMSOL. The velocity of the gas flowing through the pipe was found using the pipe flow module, and this was then used to calculate the streaming current expected along the pipe. An axisymmetric model in the AC/DC module was then used to calculate the potential on the inner surface of the pipe and the electric field across the pipe wall. The streaming current was applied as a boundary condition on the inner surface of the pipe, assuming exponential charge generation and charge relaxation, and grounding on the outer pipe surface and the pipe ends due to the buried nature of the pipes that we were modelling. The top image shows a close-up of the results of the plot of the potential from the AC/DC module. It's a close-up at the end of the pipe, and you can just about distinguish between the fluid and the pipe wall at the bottom of the top image. We then compared the results of the AC/DC module to the analytical Wormsley equation. We found that applying the streaming current using the external current density boundary condition, a specific boundary condition in the AC/DC module, whereby the electric field across the pipe wall was constant, provided results which coincided with the Wormsley equation, shown by the light blue and yellow lines in the graph. Applying the streaming current using the boundary current condition, which is more representative of the physical situation, allowed for a radially varying electric field that reduced the conservatism further and provided a more accurate value of the potential on the inner surface of the pipe. We then built upon the level 3 model to add in the behaviour of sand. We did this using the capacitor model, which was used to model the charge transferred during the impact by treating the sand and pipe as either side of a capacitor. Several tuning parameters in this model, so we used literature to tune at that model. Then considered how to incorporate the charge transferred by the sand particles into the model, and we did this by effectively smearing out the localized charging due to the impacts over the impact area, whether that is the entire inner surface of the pipe for a fully suspended flow or just the bottom region of the pipe for a moving bed. This was then incorporated into the model using an additional current density. So finally, we had a go at validating our models using a lab scale setup. We use a transient model in the AC/DC module this time because the steady state condition was not close to being reached, and compared this to charge evolved on a HDPE pipe in the lab. You can see in the graph to the left of the slide how the potential on the outer surface of the pipe was predicted by the model to increase with time, and the central graph shows how the experimental results. The model can be seen to be quite conservative compared to the experimental results, which is a positive starting place for us. However, it did not capture the skewed shape of the experimental profile, nor the correct magnitude, so more work needs to be done in this area to further investigate this. So, conclusions. Assessing and controlling the risk of electrostatic discharge facilitates the widespread use of non-metallic pipes in the oil and gas industry. Hierarchical modelling approach has been developed to assess at the design stage the potential risk of electrostatic discharge in non-metallic pipes. The level 3 approach has the flexibility to assess the efficacy of potential mitigation methods, and our experimental validation showed the models to be conservative, although more work needs to be done to investigate the level of conservatism between the experiment and the model. So we aim to do some future work looking at validating the streaming current equation used in the models, and also the capacitor model, which incorporates the charging due to the sand. So thank you very much for listening. My name is Rachel Lunn, and if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel, for that video submission. We will once again pause for questions, and please use the questions box to get in touch. And whilst I give you a moment on doing that, don't forget there are more IChemE award webinars coming up throughout the next couple of weeks. You can find all the dates and times by visiting www.icheme.org/global-awards. And Rachel, since you are here with us today, there is a question here that I would like to read for you.
Okay, I'll try and answer.
Okay. Will the model work for metallic pipes that are lined with non-metallic coating? The contact surface with the material is non-metallic. However, the electrostatic charging or discharging would be different in this case. Lined pipes are prone to propagating brush discharging with higher energies.
Yeah, so we should be able to extend the model to look at that sort of scenario by, putting those sort of boundary conditions into the FEA model. We haven't looked into it, and we haven't sort of looked at the specific behaviour at the interface between the metal and the non-metallic liner. But yeah, it should be able to, once we've developed it a bit further, be extended quite comfortably into that sort of situation, is the hope anyway. We'd have to validate it in that sort of situation as well, because so far the validation is focused just on HDPE pipe. But yeah, we're looking at developing it into more realistic situations.
Thank you, Rachel. So it means more work, more challenge in the future. That sounds great. I don't see any more questions, so I would like to thank you again for this really interesting presentation. And
thanks.
We still have 3 more. Thank you, Rachel. And we still have 3 more finalists to hear from before we announce our award winner. So let me introduce our next speaker. It's another joint entry, and this one is from Safer Together, Aero Energy, Enermec, Santos, and Worley. Please welcome Laurence Ledru.
Australia. Good. All right. It looks like the technology is working. So I'm Laurence Ledru, and I'm the lead process safety engineer at Origin Energy Integrated Gas in Australia. And I'm really thrilled that Safer Together process safety animation, We All Have a Part to Play, has been nominated as a finalist at this year's awards. And I'm honoured to deliver this presentation on behalf of Safer Together and share the story of our process safety animation. We all have a part to play, and how we can grow process safety awareness through animation with industry collaboration and leading to successful outcomes. But before we jump in, I'd like to start with a process safety moment just to set the scene, and a good one with good outcomes. So about 8 years ago, I was working in a methane gas processing plant, and I received a call from a maintenance planner. They were doing a maintenance activity with a like-for-like replacement on a valve that was located on a gas line. So unfortunately, being a legacy asset, the same model of the valve was not available. And he had sourced a couple of quotes from manufacturers. This planner had the awareness required to understand that if the wrong valve was installed, this could lead to a loss of containment of methane. He understood how his role had a part to play to ensure process safety. But how often is it the case? And how often do we come across personnel in roles, whether frontline or not, who do not understand or relate how their role could influence process safety outcomes? So this is really the whole idea behind this animation. Raise awareness and celebrate the fact that we all have a part to play to ensure positive process safety outcomes. So before we go on, who is Safer Together? Safer Together is a non-for-profit member-led organisation of oil and gas exploration and production industry, operating companies and contract partners companies in Australia. Safer Together is committed to creating the leadership and collaboration needed to build a strong and consistent safety culture in a rapidly evolving industry. So the working groups are comprised of subject matter experts and user representatives from member companies, operating companies and contract partner companies, and to undertake specific work streams focused on key safety issues facing our industry. Process Safety Working Group is one of the working group amongst 8 other groups. So who is Safer Together? It's comprised of over 140 members across 6 industry sectors. in Australia. So as you can see, there's operating companies such as Origin Energy, Santos, Shell, QGC, ConocoPhillips, etc. There's a number of them. Drilling services, there's transport, logistics, camp services, and other services, construction maintenance services, engineering consultancies, and field services. There's a large group of people working together towards safety. So what was the goal with this project? Essentially, it was to bridge an awareness gap. Some companies in our industry have a significant experience in process safety, and unfortunately, others do not. So there are many touch points in our industry activities that can contribute towards preventing loss of contaminant incidents and the significant harm that can go with these. So really the project's objective was to enable our member companies to start or enhance an existing process safety conversation about the roles we all play in keeping hazardous materials contained. This initiative of Safe Together aimed to improve our member companies' awareness of the influence we all have on process safety. How did we tackle this? To develop this work, process safety professionals from across multiple companies in various sectors within the gas industry in Queensland collaborated to ensure broad suitability of content to support the process safety understanding we wish to grow. We wanted to touch on the asset lifecycle, from design through to operation, the supporting supply chains within our industry sectors, and the process from well through pipeline, compressor station, and onto a LNG facility. We did not intend to cover all process safety risks that we face daily, nor to provide an exhaustive list of barriers that we ensure are in place. We did want to introduce process safety concepts within the narrative that can be expanded upon later conversation. So it's really the basis of having further conversation with teams. It's an appetizer, essentially. And we wanted our member audience to appreciate that although we may not all be on the front line each day, the actions we take and decision we can make influence what occurs with our facilities. And all of that in 3.5 minutes, which is quite short. So there's something different we saw. So we are all aware how difficult it is to retain people's attention, especially in process safety. So this was really something front of mind. How do we provide a resource that will capture and retain attention long enough for a message to be heard? That was a key challenge. So we had to create something that was visually and audibly interesting, inspiring a call to action, and unusual, unexpected with an Australian flavour. And that was the end result, trying to captivate people to watch the animation. And what was a must? It was imperative to the project team that scenes created appropriately capture environmentally appropriate and sustainable views within the Australian context. Importantly, it has included an acknowledgement of country at the film start, acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands upon which this industry operates in Australia. Diversity of people has been represented through depiction of multiple ethnic backgrounds and genders in the sketches. Environmental sustainability has been affirmed through an inclusion of Australian wildlife in several scenes, with flying cockatoos and kangaroos in the landscape. Where red and green colours have been used to convey meaning, colourblind people have been catered for with the inclusion of cross-hatching in the red colour used to make it more distinctive. And subtitles have been incorporated to support those with hearing impairment or use of the film in noisy environment. So what was the outcome? Process Safety, We All Have a Part to Play was created and premiered in 2019. It is a visually engaging, short animated feature that aims to improve foundational process safety awareness. It's an inherent call to action to recognize the importance of the role that every one of us individually would play as a process safety influencer. To do this, the film touches on core process safety concepts across an asset's life cycle from design through to operation, supporting the supply chains and the process from pipeline compressor station to LNG facility. It shows why process safety is important and provide opportunities for safety conversations with varied audiences about multiple aspects of process safety. So it's not intended to cover all process safety risks. However, it does introduce the concepts in the narrative. How is it being used? The video was implemented via the Safe Together website hub, which acts as a central industry safety and collaboration hub for our members. It demonstrates positive collaboration by multiple subject matter experts across companies for the benefit of the industry as a whole. It is now used to introduce process safety in the common industry induction for the oil and gas industry in Australia. It is referenced by IOGP as a resource for process safety fundamentals and has been used as part of training and campaigns by our member companies. It is relevant globally and has been made freely available. So thank you all, and to the other nominees, congratulations on the recognition of your efforts to improve process safety. I'm open to questions now. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurence. Thank you so much. And yes, we are now moving into Q&A. So if you have questions, please type them in the questions box. And I'd like to kindly inform you that the winner of this award will have a chance to lift a second prize before the end of the month. All of our team award winners qualify as finalists for our top prize, the Outstanding Achievement in Chemical and Process Engineering Award. We will be announcing the winner of that award on Friday, 15th of October. Now, we have a question, Laurence. How can we access the library of these videos?
So the video is freely available on the Safer Together website, for which I can share a link with the committee. That's not a problem at all, if that is possible.
Okay.
Yes, please, Laurence. If you just pop it in, message me and I'll send it out to everybody. Thank you.
Great.
Perfect. Thank you again. Thank you so much, Laurence. It was really informative and useful. And now thank you. It's time to move on to our next presentation from Saudi Aramco. Please welcome Hossein Al Abdul Jabbar. Hossein, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Susanna. Just give me a moment to share my desktop. So I just click on show.
Yeah, that's right.
And then I get some system preferences issue. Okay. Clicked on show, but just a moment. It says would like to capture the computer screen. Do you see my desktop now?
No, not yet.
No, we can't see it actually. Yeah. Can I suggest that perhaps you send me your slides in an email as a backup, and I could present them on your behalf?
Sure, can do that.
Yeah. Susanna, while Hussein sends me his presentation slides to awards@icheme.org, please, Hussein, would you mind going to the final finalist, Lee, and then we'll come back to Hussein at the end. Is that okay?
Yeah,
yes, absolutely.
Which email again?
Yep, it's awards@icheme.org. I'll send you a message, Hussein, as well. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So then it is time now to listen to a presentation, another one, because we just switched them, and that will be our Malaysia Process Safety Award winner, Asian Bintulu fertilizer. And so as such, please welcome Lee Yong Kiet. Lee, please.
All right, a very good day, everybody. So today I'll be sharing with you guys on safety critical elements from ASEAN Bintulu Fertilizer, Malaysia. Our team consists of our team leader, Mr. Wong, our team member, Faziana, Tan Bao Ling, and myself, Lee Yong Kiet. So basically, identity is a critical element in building human relationship and also the reputation. And we truly believe that it is equally true for the instrumentation and also equipments in our plant. Without the right identity being given to the equipments and also instrumentation, we cannot truly appreciate what is their function, whether it's for production, for process safety, or for other perspective. Before we dive into the topic today, I would like to just briefly go through our company's background. So our company, IChemE Bintulu Fertilizer, it was incorporated in 1980 and come on stream on 1985. We are producing granular urea and also ammonia, and we became a subsidiary of Petronas Chemical Group in 2010. As a petrochemical plant, we are subjected to high pressure and temperature vessels, equipments that is required to produce our intended product. And to operate a plant with such high temperature and pressure, there is definitely some sort of safety feature being introduced into our plant's vessels and equipments. And those are the things that we will classify as safety critical elements. So safety critical elements actually refers to the hard barriers to prevent or mitigate the major accident hazards. And these major accident hazards actually coming in from our hazards and effect management process. And this basically what we mean is that before the top event happens, we would like to prevent it. And if it do happen, we would like to prevent and mitigate it so that it doesn't escalate to a worse consequence. So now that we know these safety critical elements are very crucial and important to safeguard our plant operation and preventing any unwanted process safety incident, but how do our people perceive these safety critical elements? And we start by going down to the ground and check in with our maintenance team personnel. And in 2020, we go down to the ground and then we talk to our maintenance staff. And that's where from the survey, we found out that it takes about 15 minutes to find the right safety critical elements tags to perform the preventive maintenance or troubleshooting. This is partially due to the fact that our plant throughout the past 30 years is subjected to rejuvenation and also revamps. And this causes the space between the equipments to be much more smaller than they're intended to be when the plant was first built. And in 2020, there are about 12,000 of work order being called into the system, resulting in more than 1,400 hours spent in searching the SCE tags alone. And every time when they are trying to bypass this SCE or even troubleshooting this SCE, a risk assessment was being triggered to analyze what are the risks associated with bypassing these SCEs. And based on this risk assessment, it was identified that a bypassing of these wrong tags is a prominent risk, and it keeps on popping up at every single risk assessment. And this, from the risk assessment, we saw that it creates a potential loss of $320,000 for any unplanned shutdowns, and also 1.06 million USD for asset damage if the bypass was somehow mistakenly went wrong. So now that we know there are some difficulties faced by our staff in terms of managing our safety critical elements, we turn back to our team and try to figure out what are those opportunities that we have in terms of improving these safety critical elements. And that's where we go into this improvement opportunity analysis. We basically just go back to the very basic Ishikawa diagram or the fishbone diagram. And we went into these 5 elements, the system, methods, people, machine, and also tools. And eventually we found out that there are 2 very prominent causes to it. Is that number 1, people unable to differentiate this SCE at site. As I mentioned just now, our plant is a 30+ years old plant, and then since the very beginning of our plan, there is no differentiation between safety critical elements and non-safety critical elements. So hence our technicians and our operators, they do not know when they go to the plant, they just look at it, it is just the same thing, okay? So they don't have a differentiation of what is the safety critical elements. And secondly, is that the tag numbers are not clear and we are unable to find the correct tags at site. What I mean by not clear is that, like what I mentioned just now, is that we have gone through revamps and rejuvenations of the plant, and hence different contractors have different tagging methodology, and some tags has aluminium with engraving, some have a metal plate with engraving, and worse still, some metal plate are with permanent marker. Imagine how permanent is that. So eventually, after a few years after that, then it starts to fade, and then you lose what is the information about the identity of our instrumentation or the equipment itself. So with these two causes being known to us, we start to want to create this target and also objective to improve our safety critical elements in our plan. And hence we reach to this project target, which is basically to improve our safety critical elements visual management. And this is done by using a simple safety critical element tags. And this will be able to reduce the risk of bypassing the wrong tags and at the same time improve the visibility of our safety critical elements in our plan. And as we all know, bypassing of wrong tags is very, very potentially going to leading to our process safety incidents. And we really do not want that. And by just doing this small tags, we believe it can achieve its targets. So with a very clear targets and objective in mind, our team proceed to venture out and split out our projects into steps. And firstly, we go into conducting the risk assessment. And by developing a hazard effect register list, we then identify what are the potential hazards, the threats, the top events, and the scenarios or the consequence of these hazards. And from this hazard effect register, we then identify which are the highest and very high risk rating to us, because those are the ones that will eventually cause us some huge consequence in terms of people, environment, or even asset damage. So then with this high and very high risk, we proceed to our step number 2, which is to identify our control and recovery barriers using bow tie analysis. So basically, bow tie analysis tells you what are the preventive barriers before the threats reaching to the top event, and also what are the mitigative barriers before the top event going into the consequence. And with this in mind, these barriers acted as our safety critical elements. Those are the ones that fits into our definition, and those are the guardians of our plan. So we extracted out this list, and before we proceed to print it out into the text, we also spend some time to think about what are the materials and also the design of the text. Because like I mentioned just now, we have so many different types of tags, and it really doesn't help our plan sustainability to operate in the longer term. So we look into the options of metal tags, and then also what are the designs that required, what are the colors and what are the schemes that we can use in order to bring a certain subtle sense to our staff so that they can see it directly. So with the material and also tag selection being completed, we then perform a site visit, and last but not least, we went to tag at site. So here are some of the pictures of our tagging at site. So we went up to a tank, our ammonia tank that is, and then also we tagged on the several instrumentation that is part of our SCEs. So of course, once we have done the tagging, it's not for us, it is actually back to the staff in our plant, basically the maintenance staff and also the operators. So in our case, we went out to survey again with our maintenance technicians. So just to remind again, last time previously, we spent about 15 minutes to search for the tags, and then before they perform the actual work, then after that, after the implementation of our tags, we found out that the average time taken to search for the right tag reduced to 7 minutes. This is averagely 7 minutes from the participant that we have surveyed. And this is a whopping 53% reduction in terms of the searching time. I mean, if we compare to 2020, out of all the 12,000 or the being called out, they could save about 780 hours in terms of the searching time. And that is a lot of hours can be put into other kind of works to troubleshoot and maintain other equipments rather than spending times to search for it. So when we talk about this project, we also link it to the sustainability agenda. I believe that sustainability agenda is also a very widely known agenda by any industry in the world. We were now striving for to be a more sustainable industry so that we can help the planet Earth. And so in terms of our project, we also adopt two of the concepts of our sustainability agenda. First is the recycle. Our tags, just as I mentioned, are actually made of stainless steel with UV printing. So that means that whenever we have a new text that is coming in after our risk assessment, or it has already been decommissioned, we can use the tag again, reprint it, and reuse it at site, so that this tag will not just be a tag for one use only. Okay. On the second terms is that we actually adopted reuse as well. We found out that there's quite a lot of stainless steel wires that's just thrown at the site by our maintenance technicians. So we went on and asked their permission to use the wires, and by reusing these wires, and we execute this tagging exercise in our plant so that we can achieve our intended project outcome as well. And our project is actually, if you look at it, is a very simple yet very powerful project, I can say, and it is scalable by any industry in the world. This is a very simple way of us giving back to our plant personnel and giving them a notion that these are the safety critical elements in our plant. Okay. In any industry, I don't think there's any industry without any safety feature. And that is why this project is so easy to be scaled by any industry, and you can use any tags you want. Okay, it may not be applicable for you because due to weather condition or whatnot, but this tagging exercise has already been proven in our plant to say that it has successfully highlighted the importance of these safety critical elements, shortened their searching time, and also prevention of bypassing the wrong tags. So by labeling it and giving it back the right attention, the right identity, all staff now are able to perform their tasks related to our SE at a low risk and a lower time. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. That was really impressive. Thank you very much. And I'd like to ask everyone if you have any questions to Lee. I can't see right now any questions. No, and thank you so much for your flexibility, Lee, to jump in earlier.
No worries.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And now I would like to kindly invite from Saudi Aramco, Hussein Al Abdul Jabbar, to present his presentation. Yes, that is fantastic. Please, Hussein.
Thank you, Susanna, and thank you, Lee, as well, for your flexibility. And I apologize for that. I'm gonna just open my camera and then can get going. Good day, everyone. My name is Hussein Al Abdul Jabbar from Saudi Aramco, and today I will be sharing a brief about our submitted entry that reached this final stage in the IChemE Global Awards. Our entry is Process Safety Event Ratio, and I will be discussing what does the ratio mean, why it was developed, and also the tangible results that we achieved at the corporate level following its implementation. Before getting into the details, I would like to briefly describe how process safety events evolved in the industry. Major process safety incidents have resulted in catastrophic consequences, such as loss of life, environmental damage, and loss of investment. And until the end of the 2000s, a common gap kept being identified in major incident investigations, which is the lack of process safety performance measurement in the industry. In response, the concept process safety event was established to bridge that gap in the refining and the petrochemical industries. It was first introduced in a standardized manner as part of API 754 in 2010, and then as part of IOGP 456 in 2011. A process safety event is defined as an unplanned or uncontrolled release of any material. In other words, they are events where loss of primary containment occurs, and they could be classified into Tier 1 or Tier 3, Tier 1 or Tier 2 or Tier 3, depending on their severity. Saudi Aramco has adopted the Tier 1 process safety event rate KPI at the corporate level. However, we felt there is a need to have a higher visibility of lesser consequences process safety events, that is Tier 2 and Tier 3, since the root causes of these smaller events help us to prevent Tier 1 and higher consequences events. Hence, we developed a comprehensive KPI that is inclusive of all 3 tiers, and this KPI is called the process safety event ratio. Our desire to maximize the learning from process safety events drove us to this innovative KPI. The process safety event ratio was introduced as a combined corporate KPI 2 years ago, giving the visibility to all 3 tiers of process safety events in a single KPI. The KPI drives improvement by measuring minor events as well as by measuring major events. And you can see the formula in your right-hand side. In the numerator, we have the sum of the less severe events, Tier 2 and Tier 3, and in the denominator, we have the more severe events, Tier 1. The statistical expectation is said to be 10 to 1. However, we made sure that this should not be confused as a target, but the aim is to encourage reporting of minor Tier 3 events and collect meaningful information that could be analyzed to extract the learnings in order to prevent major incidents. This process safety event ratio KPI has been supplemented with corporate efforts to ensure robust management of all tiers of process safety events. Our efforts included developing a process safety event closed loop system, and this is a central system that empowers anyone in the company to report process safety events. It also facilitates the classification by independent safety professionals, and in addition, all events are investigated and recommendations are tracked to closure through the system. Conducting regular deep dive analyses to identify relevant trends and benchmark our performance against industry peers. The quality of these analyses, in fact, has significantly increased with the collected information from Tier 3 events, leading to more accurate trending and results. Thirdly, establishing a comprehensive process to manage communication of lessons learned across the corporate organizations. That includes a central hub, process safety bulletins, and roadshows that enable exchange of information between process safety SMEs and frontline personnel. And finally, embedding this KPI in a number of regular provisions to support decision-making by management. These include the weekly safety KPIs report, the monthly field visits by executive management, the quarterly safety dashboard, and the safety committee meetings. And all of these efforts were applied not only for the more severe Tier 1 and Tier 2 events, but also to the minor Tier 3 events. At the end, we are glad that all these efforts have yielded significant results, including reporting of minor Tier 3 events has been improved in 2 consecutive years. In 2019, we recorded 48% increase compared with 2018. And in 2020, the increase was 39% compared with the previous year. In addition, the process safety event ratio KPI has been also an effective tool for site management to gauge the health of the safety and reporting culture. As a result, we recognize the reporting increase of minor Tier 3 events in more than 60% of our organizations in the first and second year as well. Based on our experience and the positive results we have achieved by adopting this KPI at a corporate level, we are sharing these best practices to benefit the whole process industry. With this, I conclude my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Hussein. That was really, really interesting. And thank you for fixing the problem. So it was really enjoyable. I don't know if you have any questions. And in the meantime, while you have time to type some questions, if you've been suitably inspired by today's presentations, which were absolutely fantastic, it might be time to start thinking about your own awards entry for next year. Keep an eye on the IChemE website for more details, but we plan for open for entries in early March 2022. So mark it in your calendar. And we have a question here. What PSE ratio benchmarks do you see as representing good or poor performance?
So the PSE ratio, we made it clear that the statistical expectation 10:1 is only as a guide for site management to gauge the health of the safety and reporting culture. We recommend usually, there is no solid or threshold values. However, we do recommend when the ratio is below the average of the corporate ratio. For example, in a facility, the ratio is below the average in the corporate. We recommend them to conduct deep dive analyses and understand why is that and address the findings. I hope this answers the question.
Okay, thank you. And we have one comment. Excellent presentation. With that, I would like to thank you, Hussein.
Thank you, Susanna.
Thank you so much. And it is time now to move on. And we have reached the moment that we have all been waiting for. It is time to find out the winner of the IChemE Process Safety Award, sponsored by PM Group. Before we do that, I'd like to thank all our finalists for joining us today and for taking the time to share more details about their fine work. That was really enjoyable, as I mentioned. I'm sure you will all agree, a fine, diverse range of work on show. Let's start by announcing our highly commended entries, and they are the joint entry from Safer Together, Aero Energy, Enermec, Santos and Worley, and GSK. Now it's time to announce the award winner, and for that, I'd like to hand back to PM Group's Shauna Turner. Shauna, please.
Thank you, Susanna. And I would like to join Susanna in saying thanks to everyone for some fantastic presentations today, and well done everyone on being finalists. So with no further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the winner of the IChemE Process Safety Award, sponsored by PM Group, is GSK Research and Development. Congratulations.
Congratulations to GSK R&D and everyone who worked on the winning entry. Anthony, I hope you are still with us. If we can get you back on the screen, please tell us how does it feel to be an IChemE Award winner?
Very much still with you. It feels absolutely fantastic. I want to say really thank you to all the finalists, because I think the vibrancy and diverse range of the finalists is fantastic. I think it shows a real strength for chemical engineering around the globe. So particular, obviously, huge thanks to my team. I think it's very inspiring for the younger engineers in my team. It's fantastic for us. Thanks to PM Group for sponsoring, to the judges, and I'm sure being the IChemE, all gave freely of their time, and they've had a really tough job. And also thanks to the IChemE staff for all the administration of these awards. But I'm sure on behalf of the team, we're all very pleased and delighted. And again, well done to all the finalists. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony, and again, warm congratulations. And thank you everyone for joining us today, especially all our finalists. So thank again, and a big thank you once again to our sponsor, PM Group. We have still more IChemE Awards webinars to come between now and the end of the week. So we will be back this afternoon to announce the winner of our Young Industrialist Award. But that's all for now. And thank you for joining us today. Thank you.